So coming into today's event where we will be discussing almost everything geophysics, because we understand and we know that it tends to be very hard for graduates to actually penetrate the industry, especially in this climate. And so now we need to understand what options do we have and how can we actually become geophysicists who actually strive for positive change in Africa and also in the world. Now, before we start, I'd like to first introduce the WSGS committee. And for those who may not know what WSGS is the Wits Students Geophysics Society, which is essentially a student chapter of the International Society for Exploration Geophysicists. And so I'd like for all of the executive members to actually introduce themselves before we actually get started. And so I'd like us to start with our president for the WSGS committee. Courtney. Mpulusa, can you please introduce yourself?
Is Courtney there or should I go?
I think she unmuted, so yeah, Courtney, you can start.
Problems with my mic. Hi, my name is Courtney Shargan, and I'm doing my honors in geophysics, and I'm the president of the Geophysics Society.
Oh, hello everyone. My name is Mpulusa Mnanduri. I'm currently an honors student at Wits doing my honors in geophysics, and I'm the vice president of the Wits Students Geophysics Society.
Great. Thank you very much. There is one more member who I think maybe she is running late. Her name is Pumla Shange, and she is the treasurer for the WSGS committee. Now, today we have three speakers who will come and talk to us about geophysics, the career of geophysics, and how to actually prepare for geophysics. And so before we start, I'd like to mention that this session is being recorded. And so if you may not want to be recorded in this session or be shown, please close your video, if I should say, and yes. So today's first speaker is Mr. Gavin Self. Gavin Self is a consulting geophysicist with 25 years experience all over Africa, having consulted to companies like BHP, Billiton, Anglo-American, De Beers, Southern Era, Gem Diamonds, and he even went on to establish his own company called Geofocus, which provides geophysical acquisition, consulting, equipment rental, and equipment rental services, and to minerals and engineering and environmental industries. He has a BSc honors with a dual. He has a BSc honors dual geophysics and geology degree from the University of the Witwatersrand. And Mr. Gavin, thank you very much for accepting this invitation. And yes, I'd like to pass on the mic to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Malika. It's nice to meet you all, and I hope we can give some relevant advice. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I think things have changed a lot. When we were graduates, mining houses were very, very strong. What we used to call the mining houses were very strong in South Africa. So you had the big Anglo-Americans, the Goldfields, the JCI, and all those guys. And our gold mines were pumping, so it was fairly easy to become a member of one of those geophysics departments. Some of those big companies had big geophysics departments. Nowadays, when I look at the situation, it's very much more difficult. Louis, can you just mute your microphone?
And Mohammed also.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, it's very difficult right now, and one has to, as Malika asked me to point out or to discuss, how difficult it is to set yourself apart, firstly, and secondly, how to break into the industry and what sort of skills it would take and what sort of opportunities it would take to get into the geophysics industry. Things have changed quite a lot. We used to be very, very mineral exploration focused. And although mineral exploration comes and goes in phases, and sometimes when it's in a good phase, there's really a lot of work around. There are these two other things that have happened since, which are environmental geophysics and geotechnical geophysics. And those two things are becoming very, very big. And I tell you, if I had to come out of if I had to graduate tomorrow, the things I would look at is environmental geophysics and geotechnical geophysics. Now, the way you get into something like that, what is geotechnical geophysics? So what happens is when there's a whole lot of geotechnical geologists out there, these guys they're not full-blown geologists. They did it with civil engineering. And obviously, when you're building bridges, putting up solar sites, putting up wind sites, wind farms, everything comes down to the soils and the geology. So that's actually the starting point for geotechnical geologists. And particularly because Joburg, Centurion, and Pretoria are built on dolomite, there's massive amounts of sinkhole going on as well. And nowadays, there's so many rules in place for building on dolomite that it's actually worked in the geophysicist's favor, because you can't grade a dirt road on dolomite by law without first having a gravity survey or a radar survey or something like that to look for sinkholes in the dolomite. So these are the places that you need to look to go into: environmental in terms of cleaning up mines, and geotechnical in terms of working on all the engineering projects that are happening in South Africa. It's going to be very difficult to break into exploration because there's so little exploration going on. Secondly, there's very little going on in South Africa. Most of it's up in Tanzania and West Africa, and it's quite difficult for South Africans to break into that without experience, because obviously you've got to employ Tanzanians first in Tanzania, you've got to employ West Africans first in West Africa, etc., etc. So I would suggest that the university starts to concentrate quite heavily on producing graduates who know what geotechnical and environmental geophysics are. And that means changing your focus from just merely doing gravity surveys to doing gravity surveys specifically for dolomite, sinkholes, etc., and for what they call ground stability studies. At the same time, resistivity surveys have come back hugely into favor. Resistivity, everybody thinks of as this old thing that came around years ago. You pump current into the ground and now nobody does it anymore. Let me tell you, when it comes to the geotechnical guys, they love resistivity because it maps a bedrock beautifully, maps depth to bedrock. And the third thing that's very, very popular in the geotechnical environmental world is refraction seismics, very shallow refraction seismics, but also MASW, multi-channel analysis of seismic waves. And these are done with the same sets of equipment, basically a geode, a geometrics geode that I know the university does have. So Sue and all your compatriots at Wits, what we really need to do is start changing the focus of the training so that these guys come out and they know what it is to do a ground stability survey. And we'd be happy to take students on that kind of thing. As you know, we've been trying to help out at Wits. Geofocus has been trying to help out at Wits. And we're more than willing to take on students who want to do field work in those fields, geotechnical and environmental, because I believe that that's where you're going to find your work. And the reason for that is there are so many geotechnical, geological companies out there. There are literally hundreds of them, and all of them need ground stability studies for building. There are hundreds of solar sites going up in this country. There's hundreds of wind farms going up in this country. We're building ports at Kucha. And it's amazing how every single one of those wind turbines and every single one of those solar panels needs to be grounded. So you need a geophysical survey, so you need a resistivity survey to map the conductivity of the ground. And it's quite numerical. You can basically say if the ground is this conductive, it's incredibly corrosive, and you don't want to be putting your solar site right there. Things like that. So, and I firmly believe that graduates can find employment in those fields for the simple reason that there's so much work in those fields, way more work than in exploration. So we really need to look at, particularly in honors, I would say, Sue, a specialist geotechnical type survey course. And we'd be happy to help out there and send our guys around and show exactly how to do these things in the field. The type of survey you do for a solar site, the type of resistivity survey, the type of microgravity survey we do for sinkholes. We've detected sinkholes inside buildings that are literally 2 meters across, and they're inside buildings. Gravity is an amazing tool. If you just design your survey well, you can literally find collapsing parts of buildings and houses. And the other big one is MASW and refraction seismics. I think if you do those three, if you concentrate on those three in the geotechnical and environmental arena, there's a lot of work. The environmental stuff is coming from the mines. We have thousands, literally thousands of gold mines that are spewing toxic waste into the environment. The slimes dams are collapsing. The walls are becoming dodgy, as we've seen with the collapses on Brazilian slimes dams. We get these micro tremors all the time on gold mines, and that's mining-induced seismicity. That mining-induced seismicity continually works on those slimes dams, those tailings facilities, and those dams start collapsing. The pressure at the toe of those dam walls, because of all the weight they hold back. So I'd be more than happy, together with Bjorn, to give a couple of write down a number of bullet points on an A4 piece of paper to say the kind of surveys that need to be concentrated on and the kind of companies that are employing graduates to do these kinds of surveys. It's not expensive to buy your own resistivity gear. It really isn't. I mean, Ray sells resistivity gear, and it's not that expensive. You're really just putting voltage into the current into the ground and measuring voltage. And those surveys are gold when it comes to old mines, looking at where your toxic tailings are going, because that's always conductive. So when I say resistivity surveys, obviously we're looking for conductivity. So we're just inverting the resistivity. We're looking for low resistive sites. And obviously you've got the small EM instruments like the CMD4. Now I know Wits has a lot of these instruments. So really we just need to point in the right direction and say, these are the kind of surveys that gold mines are doing on their tailings dams. They actually go right up the side of their dumps, right over the dam wall, and they survey what's happening down there. And MASW type surveys, which are related, where they actually shear wave surveys, which are very much related to collapse with micro tremors, shear waves of everything. Forget about P waves right now. They're good to map depth to bedrock, etc. But it's all about shear waves, passive seismicity, and MASW in tandem with gravity, in tandem with resistivity. It's really going to be fantastic to set up a graduate field school looking purely at the geotechnical and environmental aspects. And then from there, to get you guys employed when you go into this industry is to start, instead of talking to mining companies, talk to the geotechnical guys. The South African Geotechnical Engineering Forum is absolutely amazing. They have a website, they have an annual general meeting, and they have many meetings during the year. For example, this year they had an outing to these massive bridges over the rivers in the Transkei. Two of these rivers have to have two of the longest and highest bridges in Africa built over them. Very few people know this is going on in South Africa. The new N2 is being built right next to the coastline. And there's some fantastic engineering going on there. And right now, geophysicists are working on site in Lesotho, in the snow, using seismics and resistivity to map out the new portal tunnels for the Katsi Dam and the new dam, Polyhatsi Dam. And we're doing seismics up there monthly in the snow. So it's absolutely amazing how much work is coming out of the engineering sector. And I really think that the university and the students need to refocus in that direction. And I really think there's lots of employment activity in that direction. And very simple to set up a geotechnical engineering company that does pure geophysics in conjunction with the big guys, and you do all their surveys for them. And we'd be more than happy as Geofocus to take some of you guys on field trips. As Sue's students already know, some of them Our work is hard. We work long hours in the day, but it's very rewarding. And at the end of the day, if you can say, don't put your solar site here, put your solar site there, then you've contributed something to South Africa's development. And it's the same thing with the dams. It's actually quite rewarding work. And from there, you can branch out if you get opportunities into exploration geophysics. But I really recommend the route that I've described. So are there any questions?
Gavin, I'll get it started because I know people are shy. I just wanted to ask could you give the name of that? It's the SA Geotechnical Engineering Society, or?
Yeah, it's the South African Institute of Engineering Geologists, SAIEG. Sorry,
Okay.
Yeah, their website. We've become a corporate sponsor there because we get so much geotechnical work from them that purely as a geophysics company, we actually will attend their meetings and their conferences, because you can put up your little stand there, and these guys know that you do the 3 critical things they use all the time: seismic, resistivity, gravity. So we've become quite matey with the engineering geologists. I never thought I'd say that. And I'll tell you what a brilliant career choice would be to tack on to your geophysics degree a 1-year engineering geology degree, so that you understand what it is that these guys want from us. It's very different to the mining industry, and it's very different to exploration. What these guys want from us is the top 10 meters. So we're talking shallow geophysical techniques. They want to know, where does my ground get hard? Is it strong enough to build such and such on it? Is it going to collapse? And how many fractures have I got in it? And that's actually what they want to know most of the time. And are there any sinkholes knocking about that I should know about? Yeah. And we play a critical role with these guys. We do these reports for them all day, every day. And those reports eventually go to the Council for Geoscience. So they're very important.
No, that's fantastic. I want to talk. We're having our field school in September this year, because it's actually supposed to be right now, but not with COVID. And so I'll need to chat with you about some engineering targets, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to run a little field school, a day or two, or part of that field school. We'll send our guys there and describe what it is we're trying to do, and do it for the students, and say, these are the kind of surveys that are making money right now. This is where the work's at. Fantastic. It's not in exploration, I can tell you that much.
Yeah. Okay, great. Sorry, I'll turn back over to Malika.
Sure.
I have a question, if there's an opportunity, Gavin. Hi, my name is Richard Candy. I have a couple of questions, one of which is, in the news, there was a lot of talk about acid mine water, and I've heard nothing about that in the last couple of years. And then secondly, there's an article in the BBC this morning on how to turn geothermal water into batteries, and how they are actually effectively pumping the water out of the ground, putting it through a filter that extracts the lithium ions and then puts the water down in the ground. And I was wondering if there's any correlation or opportunities in that area. If you could comment on that.
Well, certainly geothermal. I've heard very, very good things about geothermal exploration. So that's kind of an exploration thing again. And audio magnetic tellurics. So AMT there's a strong drive to use AMT to map geothermal waters, because they are full of ions, and because they're full of ions, they're quite conductive. Again, AMT is actually a resistivity technique, but it's one of the only techniques we have that will see down a kilometer. And let's face it, these geothermal waters are coming down from there. There's no point in fooling around on surface when you're looking for geothermal waters. You need to look down a kilometer, even more. So in terms of extracting the lithium, Richard, I'm not sure about that. That's totally out of my field of expertise. I can only comment that I've heard a lot of people going about their business, particularly, funnily enough, in the Balkans. There's a huge amount of geothermal work in the Balkans, in Europe. And there's a huge amount of it in East Africa on the Rift. I think a lot of African countries are going to turn towards geothermal water for their energy needs. And it makes a lot of sense to look right in the Rift, where you're close to the mantle, and you've got all these massive faults that are coming roaring up. So Malawi and northern Mozambique and all those countries, Tanzania, are seriously looking at geothermal water for their energy needs. I forget what the first question was. What was the first one again?
What is happening about acid mine water? I mean, I've seen nothing about that. I live in Germiston, and the Germiston Lake has got a fountain. I often wonder where on earth that water comes from. I wonder if you just spill the acid water, acid mine water.
Yeah, I wouldn't be drinking that stuff anytime soon. The kind of work we're doing is we're getting asked by a lot of mines like Sibanye, Stillwater, and all the big gold mines to map where their water is leaking. Where is this stuff going? And I tell you, it's as simple as doing a resistivity survey and an EM survey. This stuff is highly conductive, and it's very easy to pick it up. And we're doing work as far north as Zambia on all the slimes dams. Everybody's concerned about drainage of slimes into groundwater and leakage, and then water coming out of mines, which is acid mine water you're talking about. Because of the sulfur content and large amounts of dissolved ions, these waters are very, very conductive. So yes, it's still ongoing. I would say that the collapse of slimes dams is the major thing now, and that acid mine drainage has gone away to a degree, as you mentioned. The guy to speak to there is Henk Coetzee at the Council for Geoscience. He spends his life doing acid mine drainage. So actually, if you're interested, give him a call. He knows everything about acid mine drainage. He's a geophysicist, and he knows what it is they're up to there right now.
Many thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Gavin, for such an informative talk and presentation. I, for one, definitely learned a lot. I think if I could recall, in the beginning of the year, when they asked us what field or what direction do we want to go to in geophysics, and they asked us that, a lot of us mentioned we want to go to exploration geophysics, mainly in the oil field. And that was mainly because we didn't really understand or know all of these various fields in geophysics. And you mentioning that there are new areas in geophysics, such as environmental geophysics and geotechnical geophysics, is very enlightening. And I'm pretty sure for most of us, it might actually help us give us a sense of direction to where we would actually want to go, especially since you mentioned that exploration geophysics is not a field that is not necessarily booming in South Africa, but it's environmental and geotechnical. So thank you very much. And yes, we will definitely be in talks with you. And yeah, thank you very much for being with us.
Absolute pleasure. And I'll see you guys at the field school, and we'll be able to give you a much more in-depth look at those kind of surveys. And I'll tell you, that's where the money's at, and that's where the employment's at. So I would definitely recommend you guys look into it. But we'll see you at the field school. Thank you very much.
Malaika.
Hey.
Malaika.
Yes?
I'm not sure if Gavin can take one question from the side.
Sure, one more.
Yes, you mentioned in your talk that it's very much easy to set up your own geotechnical company. Can you elaborate further on that?
Well, look, it's not easy to set up a company, don't get me wrong, because you need experience and you need contacts. But what I meant by that was it's easy to buy a resistivity set and start doing resistivity surveys for geotechnical companies. So literally you could run something like that from your backyard where you buy the set. They're really not that expensive. If you speak to Geotron, they have a set that's really reasonably priced. And you could pay that thing off relatively quickly and then buy yourself a seismic geode. But just remember, you can always rent equipment. So what people forget is you don't have to own equipment. There's a lot of people out there that rent equipment, and at the stage you guys are at as students, you've got a lot of good equipment at Wits. If you could get yourself a gravimeter, a resistivity set, and a second-hand seismic set, then you guys would be in business for, say, a bunch of you, 5 of you got together and said, right, we're going to start a small geophysics company that services the geotechnical companies. How do you meet the geotechnical guys? You go to the IEG, South African Institute of Engineering Geologists meeting. You set up a small stall there. You have a poster or two. You say to them, we do resistivity for geotechnical, we do gravity, and we do seismics for geotechnical. And that is sinkholes, that's dams, that's solar sites, that's power lines, that's water lines. All of those need geophysics. Believe me, we're doing them all day, every day. And we get calls from government and we get calls from the private sector. And all the guys that are building the solar sites and wind sites in this country are all foreigners, believe it or not. It's all the Italians and the Spaniards. But they are employing all the local companies to do the work. So we are forever doing resistivity surveys on pipelines. We're forever doing resistivity surveys on solar sites. And the reason for that is they need to know what the grounding conditions are. They actually put an earth into the ground there. If it's clay rich and extremely conductive, that's very bad earthing conditions. What the guys want to know is down to 12 meters into bedrock, we want to be able to put copper down there and know it's gone into resistive bedrock and that solar panel or that solar, whatever it is well earthed. And they do that for every solar site. These are little known facts. And it's very easy to do those surveys. I mean, we could train you guys up to do those surveys in a week or two, and you could start doing those surveys. And the resistivity gear is not expensive, and you can rent the seismic gear and you can rent the gravity gear. So these are the kind of opportunities that exist. And the reason I'm here today is to tell you, forget about exploration right now. Go into geotechnical. I'm telling you that's where it's all at the moment.
Gavin,
thank you.
To ask quickly about you said for the solar sites, the clay rich and conductive stuff is bad. So will they the whole site if they're on clay?
No. So look, if the entire site's built on a dolerite dike, which is a sill, which is very conductive, they will move it. But generally you find in an area, there's a mix of, they're doing a lot of these sites in the Karoo. So I'm mentioning Karoo lithologies, where you've got shales, where you've got duiker and sandstones, they're all resistive. And what they want is, they want extremely resistive sites, and they also want unfaulted sites. Obviously, you don't want to be putting up a massive 6-ton wind turbine on a fault. So we do two things for them. We do small, shallow refraction surveys. We give them depth to bedrock, competent bedrock, which is velocity like 5,000 meters a second and more. So simple. And you draw that line in. We do resistivity to tell them how conductive that ground is. If it's too conductive, which is under 20 ohmmeters, they consider that extremely corrosive on all their gear, and they keep it out of that zone. So we have very real numerical numbers we can give the engineers, and they absolutely love it. They're like blown away by the stuff. They're like, wow, thanks. Okay, we'll move that one over there. And obviously, it's geophysics, and it's not always right. But the nice thing about it is it's shallow. So it can be tested. These guys will actually put a hole, on there and test your results and actually confirm it either way, and you can calibrate. So you do have the backup of their engineering work and their test bits. You're not the only guy saying you can't build it here. They'll back it up as well.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds fantastic. I'm really keen to, push this. And
that's the direction to push students in now, because that's where the work's at. And I tell you, there's so much going on. It's insane how much work there is.
Yeah. And we have some of these older resistivity units from Geotron, and we can actually show the students how to get that set up and running, because you're correct. It's absolutely not that expensive. For less than, I think, 20,000, they can have a unit that gives us good results. It takes a little longer, but it gives us, we've done side-by-side tests with the multi-electrode, and it's the same results. Absolutely.
You've got an ARES, I believe, or an ARES, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's a little under the weather at the moment, but.
Well, Ray van Rensburg's going to love me because I'm punting him, but his stuff is so much cheaper than the imported, So.
Oh yeah.
If you want a res set,
1,000 for one of Ray's units. It's cheap.
Yeah, it's literally just current and voltage, man. You can take a fluke voltmeter and a generator out there, basically.
Yeah. Okay, great. Sorry, I interrupted again.
Okay, look, I got to run, and everyone else wants to talk, but I think that's when you do the field school. Let's push it in the geotechnical direction, and I tell you, you'll see you guys getting employed after that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr.
Hey, I'm going to do a runner now, guys. I got to go. Cheers, bye.
Thank you. Can I also ask that if anybody has questions, please don't be afraid to type them down on the chat box, and they will most definitely be attended to. Now, our second speaker for today is Mr. Joseph Matamela. Mr. Joseph Matamela is a petrophysicist at the Council for Geoscience, with a passion for delivering innovative, practical, and effective solutions in the workspace. He has a BSc honors in geology and a postgraduate degree in business and in business project management. He's also a candidate for a Master's of Science degree in geophysics at the University of the Witwatersrand, and he has 8 years experience in the mining and mineral exploration industry, having spent the last 6 years in exploration geophysics. And he has a passion for youth development and ensuring that the youth and graduate actually develop and get the actual skills in which they need. Mr. Joseph Matamela, thank you for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm Joseph. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. All right, thank you, thank you. I would like to share my screen. Please also just confirm for me if you are able to see the screen. It should be sharing now.
Yes, you can see it.
You can see it. All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. As it has been said from the introduction, I'm Joseph. I work as a petrophysicist at the Council for Geoscience. I've been asked to just talk about my journey in geophysics and my career path. So I'll just go a little bit to the basics, just to talk about how does one go about getting into the industry. I know a lot of people, like for example, the previous speaker was talking about some interesting methods that as young people you could look at where you can take your career towards, particularly the trends in the future of what you can do and where you can take your career. So I'll touch on that a little bit, but I prefer let's maybe just start from the beginning. I'll also use some examples from my own career as we go along the talk. Okay, we'll talk about the job entry requirements. What do you need to be a geophysicist? Training and development. How do you develop yourself to become a geophysicist after being a graduate? The type of work environment to expect, the work conditions, the employment prospects, because I think that is very important. I think that is very worrying for every graduate to want to know whether you'll ever be able to be employable, will you make impact, what kind of things will you be doing in the workspace, and what type of companies will you be able to work for, and the market trends. What are the salaries? What are the jobs of opportunities? Is there opportunities to start your own businesses and so forth? Okay, geophysics, what is it anyway? I think we're not gonna touch much on this because I think we all know, most of us, we are aware geophysics is just the application of physics into solving geoscientific problems. So this will vary from using magnetic methods, gravity, seismic methods. So there's a whole lot of applications and a whole lot of principles that we use. But then obviously when you go into industry, applications will vary then, for example, where you will talking about geotechnical investigation, where you'll be talking about environmental assessments, where you'll be talking about, say, for example, mineral exploration, but then cumulatively it will be the application of this mineral of physical techniques to identify these resources or to solve these problems that are facing society. So this is just a good definition that I got from UTM consultants to just define what we do as geophysicists, because sometimes it becomes very difficult, even as a young person, when you get asked, so what do you do for a living? And you say, I'm a geophysicist, and you find that more or less 90% of people you'll come across don't even have an idea what a geophysicist is. We always say, oh, so you're a geologist. So it becomes very difficult to actually even distinguish what the difference is between the two. So that's just a good definition to say geophysicists actually interpret physical properties of the earth and use the data and analyze it for specific goals. For example, that would be, for example, solving environmental problems, doing mineral exploration, doing geotechnical work, depending on what your aspirations are. Entry requirements. So in most cases in industry, an entry will be your BSc honors. I believe most of the people here who are students are in their honors level. Some are master's students. Some people are already in industry like myself. Some people enter the industry through geology, they have BSc geology, but through training and application in industry, they end up doing applied geophysics. Sometimes in academia and research, some people enter through having a master's. a master's in geology and geophysics and seismology. Myself as well, I've decided I need to merge the two. I had a BSc honors geology. I got into geophysics through training. The company that I first worked for, I think it was fortunate for me that when I got there with my BSc honors geology, they didn't have a geophysicist on site, and they were doing a lot of work that involved geophysics, and they had a lot of contracting companies that were doing geophysical work for the company. So the company decided there was no way that they could have all this data coming from third-party companies or contractors bringing them geophysical data, and they don't have anyone internally who was specializing in geophysics. And then they decided, because I joined them as a graduate, that my graduate training program will be more focused on geophysics. So then I got exposed to various geophysical methods, EM, gravity, downhole geophysical surveys. So that's how then I became a geophysicist, although I actually studied BSc honors geology from university. Then I transitioned into geophysics through training at the work environment. Although some people go directly into geophysics, like most people are already doing BSc honors geophysics. Some people actually go all the way through PhD, hopefully if blessed, like what some of you will, myself. We look at people like Sue for inspiration to get that done. Training and development, like I was saying, sometimes you have a lot of different geophysical methods that are there out there. Seismology, for example, you've got MT, you've got MASW. So all these geophysical methods, how do you then decide, for example, as a graduate, which one are you going to specialize in? So obviously, it's very rare to find that you find a person that is working in industry who is doing all these methods, unless maybe sometimes you're working for a consulting company. Some consulting companies have got capacity to do or run an array of geophysical methods. But in sometimes you find that specializing is also a good path, because for example, as he was saying, the previous speaker, that sometimes you might want to specialize in the geotechnical aspects of things, because that is where the money is at today. That is where the market is open. There's a lot of developments, for example, building of roads, building of bridges. So issues of infrastructure development require people with knowledge of geotechnical aspects of geophysics. For example, he was talking about resistivity methods, how it's useful to identification of bedrock. AMSW, for example, I was with some few colleagues last week, actually, who were going to the field to run AMSW and MT, to show that just coincides with what you were saying, that sometimes specializing in methods that are actually being used currently in the market, it's also good. So there are industry-specific methods, for example. Your seismics. You'll find that near-surface seismics is mostly used in geotechnical studies, refraction seismics. Some other seismics are used in oil and gas exploration, downhole methods, petrophysical methods that are used, for example, resistivity in oil studies. Then you've got data analysis and software. So most of the time as a graduate, when you join a company, the company will have a field of specialization that they might want you to go through. So it's important sometimes, even maybe you apply, then you know that if you're going to apply to this company, for example, it's an airborne geophysical company that specializes in electromagnetic methods. So then obviously then you will go specialize into that, because your employer then has got more interest in that specific method, and then obviously you'll be more exposed to data analysis software related to that type of geophysical method. This leads to field specialization. That's where now you've got different geophysicists, but then at training level at university, you are all honors geophysicists, but in industry, then the application, the applied part, then we differ based on what we do. For example, myself, I first got involved with different methods, but over the years, then I went to work for Weatherford. Weatherford is an oil and gas based company, exploration company. So I got more exposed to exploration geophysical methods, where you have more emphasis on downhole geophysics, which encompasses measurements of physical properties that will be density, your chargeability, you're running gamma, you're running resistivity. This also includes things like vertical seismic profiling. You will do sometimes combination of the methods with electromagnetic methods, with field surface resistivity, just to try and create maybe field tomography of the area, but then the more emphasis will be mostly on downhole geophysics. So most of my time, I spent it on downhole geophysics, although you would have to match these methods with other geophysical data that you might find. But then obviously specialization will then come into play depending on the company you're working for. As a graduate geologist, geophysicist, it is important to also be aware that to become a professional, you need to expose yourself to professional bodies. For example, the statutory body, SACNASP, where you need to register as a scientist. This just gives you a grounding in industry, because there you'll be bound to a body of ethics or a ethics board, where you comply to certain scientific standards. You comply to say maybe you will not plagiarize somebody's work, you provide work to certain professional standard. So affiliation with such professional bodies just shows your commitment as a professional to providing quality work. You've got other professional bodies that are actually voluntary. For example, SAGA, the South African Geophysical Association, they host conferences. So as a scholar or as a professional, you could go there to learn, interact, and network with other professionals. Society of Exploration Geophysics, the Geological Society, all these organizations will provide a platform for networking, which is very important, because post-graduation, you won't be exposed to a classroom or classmates. You'll be exposed to industrial professionals in different areas of the industry doing different things. So networking is important, because you tend to learn, you get to have knowledge or exposure to what everyone is doing. And if maybe you want to change, you've got an interest to specialize in something different, through these professional organizations. These are just examples of some. It's not limited to this. I just put these ones as some of them that are leading, that are out there, that a person can check them out. And once you are registered professionally, it also brings, you get professional exposure, you get known, and then obviously that's where career growth comes from. Work environment. So as a geophysicist, where do you expect to work? I mean, from the comfy of a classroom environment, luckily enough is that these days universities, we are doing things like field school. I mean, obviously at field school, you get exposed to data collection in the field, the nature of the conditions you'll be exposed to, but that does not necessarily mean that that's where everyone is going to work. For example, people are working in the research field. People are working in government institutions, laboratories. For example, currently I'm working as a petrophysics. I'm with the Council for Geoscience. The work involves mostly working in a laboratory, doing physical property measurements in a laboratory setting using equipment in the laboratory. So this will be more comfortable, because you'll be working regular hours, 8 to 5. You'll be working in an air-conditioned environment. So this is sometimes more better for some people. You'll feel, okay, it's better to work in an environment that provides you that stable home environment where you can be at your home every day. You don't have to be exposed to elements. And then obviously, some people like to do exploration work, but not really sure what entails work exploration. What does that have to do? But then obviously in exploration, there's a lot of field work. So if you're going to do, for example, an MT line will stretch maybe 3 kilometers. You have to stretch out the line. If you're going to do, for example, an MASW line, or you're going to have to do a normal refraction seismics, you've got 48 geophones on site. You're going to have to set up your geodes. So you're going to have to work exposed to the elements, to extreme temperatures, sun, maybe sometimes windy environments, cold environments. Sometimes you're going to have to work even weekends, depending on the companies that you're working for. But most companies then, for example, if you're going to work in an area where you're going to do checking for maybe acid mine drainage, that is sulfurous water, it smells, it's not so good. So, but if you have got a keen interest in that, it's a field you can go into. It pays well, but sometimes you also need to look at, are you willing to work in such environments? Because the environment sometimes can dictate the type of person you are. Whether you feel like you want to work in an office, then you can decide, okay, maybe I would rather be in a research institution. Not only research institution, for example, you've got companies that just specialize in looking at data modeling and so forth, but it's still application of geoscience, application of geophysical methods, mathematics, and so forth. And the oil and gas fields, for example, mostly it's offshore work. So you'll be working in oil rigs, you'll be working in ships that are collecting mainly seismic data. So in some cases, these areas are not really comfortable. Sometimes you find that you are living in a small environment, you're away from home for months because of the nature of the work. So the different type of work environments also, you need to look at that when choosing the specialization, as we were talking about earlier, and the type of company you want to work for. Because some people end up choosing that just mainly because you want to be a geophysicist, but then you end up regretting because you feel like now you cannot have a family life because you're away from home for months and months on end. And then there's a path you've already chosen, you've been trained, you're specializing there, and it's not easy to go back. So it's certain things that you need to think about prior to choosing a specific path or specific choice of specialization that you might want to do post-graduation. Prospects for employment. Is there employment out there? I think that is the biggest question everyone has in their mind. As it was said by the previous speaker, The marketplace is changing every day. There's different needs in society, but there's a lot of companies that are doing geophysics for different goals and for different needs. For example, you've got to put Weatherford there. I work for Weatherford. I think I did explain what they do. They are an oil field-based company, Schlumberger, one of them as well. You've got research organizations, for example, the Council for Geoscience, CSIR. They've got almost a similar goal to just provide a repository of information, research, do a lot of research, work in the laboratory. You can also work in the field. For example, I work in the laboratory at the Council for Geoscience, but at times I am in the field. Last week, I was in the field setting up seismic monitoring stations. I was in the field for 2 weeks, collecting seismic data at a drilling site that belongs to the Council for Geoscience, where they're doing a research study in the Beaufort West in the Karoo. So we went there to collect geophysical data. So at times you will still be in research, but you will not only be confined in the office, you will still be able to go out to the field and collect some data, come back to the office and analyze the data. Companies like ArcGIS, it's a software company. So they manufacture software, GIS software that you can actually use to manipulate the data that has already been collected. And then you can work for that, or you can just be a technician for that and don't need to go to the field. For example, Mira Geoscience, they're a modeling company. They provide modeling software and also provide modeling services. So it's also a field that a person can follow to decide, I don't want to go to the field, but I still like to look at data. So you can specialize at looking at data. You've got companies like Shell, which are your oil companies, that originally they were only looking at exploring for oil and gas, but now they are moving towards energy security. So they're starting to look at food security, energy security. So they're also using various amounts of geophysical methods and GIS, remote sensing, to try and solve this societal problem. So that's another space that is happening in the market that is opening up, what people can look at. Excalibur, just another example. It's not limited to these companies that I've put there, or is that I'm only alleged, I've got allegiance to these companies, but it's just putting them out there as an example to say there are still potential employers out there in different fields and looking at different goals in the market that a person can explore and see if that is of interest to them and whether they want to follow that career path. Job outlook. Don't put a very good outlook in 2019 saying that the outlook for geoscience is good. Employment will grow faster, although it's a bit tricky to say it, because if you look at the number of students that are graduating from our universities that are not working, you look at the output and the number of people who are registering to universities at first tier levels. I'm sure Steph and Sue have the better statistics, but I know they are complaining a lot of academics that you've got fewer and fewer students who are taking interest in the geoscience space, particularly because of the market uptake. But I think this is primarily because the market is changing. And the market, when it's changing so fast, I think academia also needs to adapt to it. And then, like the previous speaker was saying, that we need to then focus on teaching the relevant geophysics that is maybe required in the market. For example, he was talking about geotechnical work. I don't think it's only limited to that, but it was a very good example. So the growth is there, but we then just need to look at how do we grow, how do we evolve as an industry, as a field, to better suit ourselves, to contribute to solving societal needs and providing a need and providing a service to society. This brings us to the last part of the presentation. What are the future trends? What do you do as a graduate in geophysics? Where can you find a niche? For example, now there's a lot of research in energy. He was talking about there's a lot of solar farms being built, a lot of wind farms that are being built around across the country. These farms need to be built, the land needs to be surveyed. The groundwater of the areas need to be known. This requires geophysicists to go and do studies to provide ground stability information. So that is a good supplement. There's issues of carbon capture and storage. Where is this carbon going to be stored? What is the stability of the ground? What is the nature of the rock types that are there? What is the nature of the fractures? Those are answers that can only come from geophysics. So energy research is one big area that is coming across into the market that geophysicists need to position themselves to take the center stage, because we are the guys who can provide the background data before any investment or any growth happens in that sector. Food security, the issue of river channel mapping, issue of floodplains. This is a serious issue that it's growing across the globe. Mapping of pollution. it's very important. I saw a studies where they were talking about they were mapping areas where they were looking at drought mapping, drought monitoring using geophysics and remote sensing over the years, so that you can then have predictive modeling to identify years where you can have better rainfalls, where they can plow and so forth. So these are applications, different applications of geoscience that are coming up that in the future that we also need to provide more research into and shed more light and see how we can contribute to that water supply. It goes without saying. South Africa, almost in Cape Town, they almost reached day zero a couple of years ago. It was through geophysics, for example, the Council for Geoscience went and did an MT study, resistivity study in Beaufort West. After all these studies were done, they were able to identify areas where there was a water strike. They drilled a bowl. The bowl currently has supplied over 3 million liters of water to the Beaufort West municipality because of geophysics. So that is geophysics helping to provide and solve societal problems. So it's the future trends just proving that it's no longer need for us to concentrate on getting a work in the mining sector or mineral exploration. There are many other sectors that are opening up that we can take center stage. Fourth industrial revolution, for example, there's issues of big data, where mathematical modeling. Most geoscientists are going into that in trying to solve many issues. Some of them, geoscientists, are actually becoming analysts even in the banking space. So some are just going into developing algorithms, softwares to solve various problems, which is a combination of science and computing. So there's a lot of trends. It's a lot of space that is opening up, and I think as geoscientists, we should be happy and believe that as geophysics, we still have a lot to contribute. I think that's me saying that there's open ways, there's a lot of career growth still open out there. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you very much for such a very informative talk, Mr. Joseph. Yeah, it was, yeah, I learned a lot. I didn't really expect, in terms of future trends, there to be geophysicists to actually have an impact in food security. But yeah, it was really interesting to actually see and understand how geophysics plays a role and how it affects actually our everyday lives and essentially society. And I guess I just have one question, if I may ask, as to do you see any downward trends or like how geophysics can be affected in terms of our current like COVID-19 at the moment? Do you see how, is there a way in which you can see how geophysics or the sector itself may be affected, and changes that may be sort of prevalent pre-COVID and after COVID that we might have to be aware of?
Yes, I think post-COVID, the world will never be the same. Every industry will be impacted. There's a lot of movement today, like I was saying about 4IR, there's a lot of movement towards digitization. So this will affect the way geophysicists do business. So back in the day, there was a lot of field work that was involved, but now today you've got different technologies that are being developed. For example, you now have deployment of drones to collect, for example, data. So it does not necessarily mean that as an industry it will be impacted, but as an industry, we need to evolve into the new trends. How do we then still be able to go to the field and then not expose people to things like COVID? How do we then still be able to analyze data? So that's where now you still need to look at now, how do we then, as geophysicists, do we then make sure that our students learn more about computing? Do we then make sure that our students know programming? Do we have to make sure that lessons, for example, in software like Python becomes mandatory? So because now we are moving towards digitization, big data, data analysis, because now we are becoming what we call a data-based industry or a data-based economy. So in geophysics, it's mainly about analyzing data rather than collecting data in the field. There's a lot of data that is not analyzed, that is not being used. For example, if you look at universities now, seismic department today, they're analyzing legacy seismic data that was created, that was collected back in the 70s. So what we need now is how to improve softwares, how do we get the most out of the current data sets? I think that's where we are going.
Definitely, that makes sense. Thank you for such a very informative talk. And if anybody has questions, please write them down on the chat box, and hopefully towards the end, we will be actually able to answer those questions if time permits. Now, our last speaker is Prof. Susan Webb, who most of us may know. So Professor Susan Webb is a senior lecturer at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, specializing in research on interpretation and modeling of gravity and magnetic data. She received her BSc in geophysics from Binghamton, USA, her MSc in geophysics from Memorial University, Newfoundland in Canada, and her PhD from Wits University in Johannesburg, which presented a combined interpretation of seismic and gravity data of the Kapval Craton using results from the International Kapval Project. She is currently a member of various boards, including the Society of Exploration Geophysicists and South Africa Geophysics Association. Prof. Sue, as many of us would like to call her, has a passion for education and geophysics, and this is shown in her countless efforts to empower and connect students in various parts of Africa and even the world. Prof. Sue, thank you for having us, and yes, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Malika. I'm absolutely delighted to be doing this. Let me see if I can share my screen quickly here. And there's my screen. And where's my phone? There we go. And let's try that. Okay, it's sharing okay.
I don't see it, Sue. Does somebody else see it?
Oh,
no, we don't see it yet.
Okay, screen share.
There, right, it's just starting.
Okay, good. Okay, and let me just do full screen here. Of course, it's covered up by all the people. There we go. Now is it full screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to go through this rather quickly because I think the discussions are actually really important, but it'll be nice for you guys to have a copy of this. So this is a talk I gave to the East African group a little while ago, and it picks up on a lot of the same themes we're talking about. And I wanted to ask Gavin, and I will ask him before the field school, is about the question about using freeware as opposed to expensive software. So that's something I'm going to briefly talk on here. So I'd like to make this interactive. So you might want to take out a piece of paper and get ready to write. So we've already talked about the various jobs in geophysics from two different perspectives. And I want to actually add just a couple of them. For example, hazard and risk analysis, the CTBTO, or the Comprehensive Test Ban Nuclear Treaty Organization, often hires graduates from Africa. There's also heritage work. Don't forget about an academic career. We'd love to have you join one of the universities. And so, just keep this as another list of things that you can do. There's so many different possibilities. So I want you, I see there's quite a lot of international people on the talk. So thank you very much for joining us. And I've just put a list of companies up here that we've worked with over the years with the field school. And so you should write down right now on that piece of paper, you have 10 geophysics companies working in your region. And if you know geotechnical companies, that's even better. Just write down different things. There's some others that should be on there that probably aren't, like SRK. I think Geosoft is on that list right there. And write all these different companies down. So next, write down the name of the geophysicist or the person responsible for geophysics in that company you just listed. If you don't know the name of that person, how are you going to go to that company and ask for a job? So this is your first bit of homework, is to get busy and find out who the people are in the companies that are responsible for hiring geophysics or for doing geophysical surveys. Then find out, are you on LinkedIn with them? Have you friended them on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever? And also on LinkedIn, look around and see who has a job that you would actually enjoy. And what skills do they have that you don't have? This is how you become intentional about your career, and you start actually doing things to make sure you get the skills for the job you want. So where do you want to be in 5 years, and what are you going to do to get there? Actually write it down right now. What do you want to be doing in 5 years' time? Do you want to still be studying for your PhD? Do you want to be working for a geotechnical company? Do you want to own your own company? Write it down. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to mark it. So just write it down and have it. Once you've made a commitment to it, it changes in your brain and gets you going on it. Network, network, network. Who has the job you're interested in? What are you doing to network? How do you network in this day and age? Well, there were 29 people at some point on this discussion. I hope you captured all of their names and that you'll be able to contact them, at least on LinkedIn, and start talking to them about different things. Learn software and learn equipment. Just remember, it's all the same physics. I sort of liked what Gavin said about, we can transition into geotechnical and environmental because it is all the same physics. But your experience really counts when breaking into a new field. So if you don't know engineering, you've got to learn some of the engineering aspects. And if you can get someone like Gavin to give you an introduction there and to get you started, that's even better. So we can move between many of these jobs because the physics is the same. So again, I hate to keep advertising for LinkedIn, but it is incredibly useful. You do need the correct skills. So if you don't have them, get out there and get them. You may find you have to learn some programming or something, or you may just have to learn some specific software. So what software do you use now? Write down all the software you're currently using. Things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, GeoSoft, anything that you use, write it down. It should be on your resume. What is your skill level with it, and how do you judge that? You can't just say, oh, I'm expert at Word, and then the company finds out you don't even know how to use the spell checker. So when you gauge, there are actually websites out there where you can gauge your skill level of a particular piece of software. So go out there and use those things and say, look, I took the test and I'm an intermediate Microsoft Word user, and you can improve those skills by teaching yourself. Also, 100%, you must legalize everything you put on your resume. Make sure you are using legal software as you go out into the world. I know that a lot of people use cracked codes and things like that, but if you're working as a professional, that is absolutely not on. And you will lose jobs and you will get a bad reputation. So start legalizing now. I don't need to know about it, but as a professional, it must be legal. Okay, what free software is there out there? One of the big issues is that for smaller companies and for smaller jobs, for example, if you're working with a farmer on a piece of land, and yes, food security is actually a big deal in geophysics. I actually gave a talk or I was on a panel discussion about it at the last conference that the Council for Geoscience hosted. So that was kind of exciting. So what free software is out there? There's Gordon Cooper's modeling software. It's incredibly powerful. There's Python. And in fact, Pygmy is a 3D gravity and magnetic modeling program that's hosted at the Council for Geoscience that Patrick Cole has written. There's the UBC codes on GitHub. There's inexpensive software that's industry standard, such as Surfer. So it's not that expensive compared to some of the other softwares. There's GMT, or generic mapping tools, which gives you all the power of Surfer and Geosoft, but it's written in, I think it's written in C actually, but they give you the code for it. There's GIS software. There's free GIS software called QGIS and also GRASS. They're two slightly different GIS packages that are free. There's Seismic Unix and Google Earth. Actually, many clients, a farmer or somebody, may just want a plot of an image of your data on Google Earth so they can use it very, very quickly and easily. And this is an example of that. So as I said before, stay legal, make sure everything you do is legal, and learn to understand what software licenses allow. Things like Sci-Hub are illegal, and ResearchGate must be used correctly. So start learning this now and become scrupulous about it in your business practice. So yeah, here's an example of some data overlay on Google Earth where we've got the geology and the magnetics on Google Earth. So develop your digital portfolio. Everything online is your digital portfolio. Your digital footprint is all the pictures you want to remove perhaps that are on Facebook. But your portfolio is something you should keep curated. You can have GitHub, for example, for code, your own website, blogs. You can post your maps on blogs. Keep in mind that your social media is something, you know, that stuff never goes away. So start clearing that up now. And definitely have some examples of your writing online. If there's one thing I hear over and over from companies is that students need to learn to write better. So please put some of your writing up so people can look at that before they hire you. Equipment, how can you get it and how can you get experience? Most companies have old or broken equipment. If you're starting your own company, you might be able to work with the university or find some old equipment that you can actually get it fixed. Who have you asked? Write it down, build up that database of people. You can usually borrow or rent equipment fairly inexpensively. Fix it, find somebody to fix it. You know, we have quite a bit of old equipment that it would be great to get going again. What about your cell phone? There's a lot of apps on your cell phone that you can use for data. They're not high enough quality right now, but it's something to get you started playing with data and demonstrating that you know how to use it. So for example, the MEM sensor, that is the little accelerometer that's in every single cell phone, was actually used to do the first gravity profile on Mars. So experiment with things, show that you're creative. Even though the data aren't high enough quality, if you can show that, geez, I know how to use a cell phone for gravity, that's kind of interesting. You know, and in 10 years, maybe the cell phone sensor will be high enough quality to do that. Okay, what about the fun things? Yeah, develop some fun events. This is how you network. It's kind of hard right now, but I'm just so impressed with the number of people that have shown up for this particular event. This is really great. So dinners, networking, we had some really interesting events a while ago. We did something called the Genius event where we looked at technologies that are questionable. And we've also had, oh, what was that technology thing? We did another one where we did a scavenger hunt for looking at some other technologies. So some really good fun stuff. And we always have lots of ideas that we can workshop to do something different. So you can host these at your universities or if you're trying to start a new company and get some ideas about doing fun things. I just want to talk a little bit here. LinkedIn is, you know, interact and be professional, always be professional. One really big irritant on LinkedIn is when people are trying to contact you and they just send you a message and they say hello. And now I'm expected to say hello back. And then it carries on like this for 10 minutes before anybody gets to the point. LinkedIn, get to the point. Say, hello, I'm so-and-so, I'm from such and such university, and I'd like to study with you. I have a scholarship, and I just need to know about the application procedure. That I can answer immediately because I can get right to it. Twitter, there's a lot of interesting stuff on Twitter in the science field. There's a lot of early career researchers on Twitter posting things as soon as they happen, you know, before they're even published. Facebook is often easier to get started if you're a little shy about talking on social media. You know, maybe start with our Facebook group, the Wits Geoscience Rocks group. So here's this Genius event that we ran that was trying to look at the technology assessment group has been looking at types of geophysics that are a problem. And there's a lot of it in Africa. There's a lot of equipment coming in, some of it even from Germany that's coming in, and it's just not physics. It's just garbage. And as a geophysicist, you're going to be asked to evaluate equipment that may cost a company millions and millions of rand. So please, please, please keep up to date with what's out there and what's real and what isn't. Taste of technology, that was the one I was trying to think of earlier. We ran a Taste of Technology event where we invited very different companies, from Shango Solution, which is a company that's mining old data sets, to a communication company that I'm still in touch with. He still contacts me and we discuss ideas. And Crunchard, which is a high performance computing company, and Medini Analytics, which is developing a mine safety piece of equipment. So it was really a fun way to network and meet professionals. And we can workshop some of these ideas and talk about how to run something like this. It's a lot of fun. Okay, so establishing ground rules, what works? This was just getting to the point of when you're bringing diverse groups of people together. Do you have a code of conduct and rules of engagement? Set up your personal goals. And things like diversity, you have to be very aware of different things. So for example, it's better to have 2 or more women in a group than trying to put 1 woman in each group to develop diversity. Because if it's just a single one in each group, then people tend to get picked on. So think about diversity also in terms of age, career stage, cultural, economic strength, all kinds of different types of diversity. And write down some important ground rules about any particular thing you're doing. Okay, and integrate your work towards a goal. So you'll do many different projects in your work, in your courses, and start capturing these projects and get them in your resume. A typical thing would be a capstone integration of projects. Write down a project you'd like to do, perhaps to help a community. Everyone here on this call can actually, apply to Geoscientists Without Borders, for example, or work with the Thriving Earth Exchange as part of the AGU. GWB actually has $50,000 US to help with projects for each application. So that goes a long way towards solving some problems. So apply for the funding. There's a competition out right now, the Frank Arnault competition, and the prize is $8,000 US. And it's basically just taking data and interpreting it. And I've tried over and over and over to get people to submit an application to this. It's worth trying to do it because you get that stuff on your resume and you get noticed internationally. So go ahead and try these things. So field schools are a great way to drive community projects, and they will change with times. I'm very excited about Gavin offering to help with the field school this year. You better believe we're going to take him up on that. So that's just a picture of the 2019. That was the last one where we had a lot of people that were international. Unfortunately, last year we could only host our local students. So I'm just gonna cruise through the last couple of these. Just to wrap up quickly, you should have lists of the following. What geophysics job do you want? 10 at least, probably 50 or 100 local geophysics companies, and the list of the geophysicists in there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these things are important and you should write them down and commit to them. And this is just some of the countries of, where people have come from that have come to our field school over the years. And please keep communicating and interacting. If I don't get back to you on something, it's most likely just because I'm overwhelmed. Please give me a little bit of time and then ask again. Sometimes I'm very quick to get back. Sometimes it's really hard for me to get back. So keep trying. And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Sorry, that was a bit of a fast romp through a whole bunch of things.
No problem. No, it was amazing. It was excellent. There was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of information, but I think a lot of us got a lot actually from that. And yes, basically trying to get out of your comfort zone and exploring yourself and getting out there is the way. And I actually really believe in that, and I'm an advocate for that, because that's the main way to grow as a person, not only in the field of geophysics, but then for your own self-development. yeah, like I said, if there are any questions, please feel free to jot them down on the chat box. And like Prof. Su said, you can see that all of the participants here, and perhaps we can also jot down each of their names, try to search them on LinkedIn, and we could collect. I'm really glad and excited that I see people from Malaysia, India, Uganda, all everywhere in the world. And it's really amazing because I would say 10 years ago, this wouldn't have been possible. If perhaps there was a geo talk, it should have only been people from Wits. But now, whenever we talk about geo talk, we talk about on an international scale, which is honestly really, really amazing. And yeah, we are really privileged for that. Thank you very much, Prof. Su, and to all the other three speakers for actually coming in and speaking and giving us such vital information. I'll now go to the Vice President, Mr. Mpulusa, to actually give us a vote of thanks and, yes, close off the event. Thank you.
Oh, thank you again, Mr. Malaika. I'd just like to send a special thanks to Prof. Steph for assisting us throughout the whole planning of the whole process. It's much appreciated. Prof. Su, thank you for holding our hand throughout the whole planning as well. It's much appreciated. Mr. Joseph, thank you so much for pitching. I don't know if Mr. Gavin is still around or is not, but I'm gonna thank him in his absentia. It was really informing and worth tuning in. So, last but not least, I would like to thank everyone for coming through. I see the turnout was quite larger than we had anticipated, and it's very much encouraging. It shows that we're really doing something, not just for our own country or university, but also the world at large. It's really encouraging. I see my people from all around the world. It's nice. It's actually nice that we have people from Wits and other institutions as well. It's quite encouraging. Thank you. And also a special thanks to the team as well. My Mr. Malaika, the secretary, Pumla Shange, the treasurer, Courtney, the president, and myself, Ompulusa Mnanduri, the vice president. We hope to be seeing you soon on one of our talks. We're gonna be organizing more of these talks as we proceed. Given also the nature of the pandemic as well, we really can't thank you enough for tuning in. It's been lovely having you here, and please do subscribe to our pages. Do like our Instagram page. It's Wits Geophysics SOC. It's underscores in between, so you're gonna get more of our links and updates on events and things like that. Also, we are also on Facebook. It's Wits. Yes, Malaika uploaded the link, the name for the Instagram page. We also have Wits Geophysics Society on Facebook as well. You can join the page. It's where you're gonna get most of the information as well. And yeah, I would like to send a special thanks to everyone who participated in the whole talk. It's been nice having you, and thank you. I think Malaika, I can hand it over to you just to brush up on things I left out, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything much left to say. Yeah, like Mpulusa say, thank you very much. And we hope to see all of you guys, if not more of you guys, on our future events, which will hopefully be relevant and impactful. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I just want to make a suggestion. I don't know if Stephanie can allow it, but it's probably worth just leaving this open and having an informal discussion for a few minutes.
Sure, why don't I leave it open till 6?
That would be really nice. Yeah, I think it, you know, if it dies down, everyone will just leave. But I think it'd be nice for people to just get to know each other. I mean, there's people from all over